Washington, Monday brought a dizzying series of developments in the investigation into Russian meddling in the 2016 elections. Here's a look at the day's news, and what it might mean. Monday's key developments. Paul Manafort, President Trump's former campaign chairman, was indicted on charges that he funneled millions of dollars through overseas shell companies and used the money to buy luxury cars, real estate, antiques and expensive suits. Also indicted was a longtime associate of Mr. Manafort's, Rick Gates. Both men appeared in federal court in Washington and pleaded not guilty. Documents were unsealed revealing that a foreign policy advisor to Mr. Trump during the campaign, George Papadopoulos, pleaded guilty to lying to the FBI. According to those documents, a professor with close ties to the Russian government told Mr. Papadopoulos in April 2016 that Moscow had thousands of emails that contained dirt on Hillary Clinton. Google, Facebook and Twitter revealed new information that underlines the breadth of the Kremlin's efforts to sow political discord using American technology platforms. Tony Podesta, a major Democratic donor, lobbyist and brother of Mrs. Clinton's 2016 campaign chairman, John D. Podesta, stepped down from his firm as he came under scrutiny for past work with Mr. Manafort. The charges against Mr. Manafort and his associates stem from work done with the pro-Russia politician in Ukraine. Without mentioning Mr. Trump or his campaign, the indictment focuses on Mr. Manafort's lobbying work between 2006 and 2015 for Viktor F. Yanukovych, the one-time president of Ukraine and pro-Russia politician. Prosecutors said Mr. Manafort and Mr. Gates schemed to hide money received for that work from tax collectors and the public. Mr. Manafort is also facing investigations by state and local authorities in New York. Here are some of the key points in the indictment, or you can read the 31-page document yourself. Mr. Manafort got his start in politics on the presidential campaigns of Gerald R. Ford and Ronald Reagan and made his fortune outside of electoral politics in lobbying. His work on the Trump campaign, rather than being a crowning achievement, instead commenced a series of events that would set the stage for his downfall. And Mr. Gates, a longtime protégé of Mr. Manafort's who was also charged, found himself deeply entangled in the Russia inquiry. Mr. Papadopoulos' plea revealed that the Trump campaign had early word that Russia had Democrats' stolen emails. The plea of Mr. Papadopoulos, a young foreign policy consultant whom Mr. Trump once praised as an excellent guy, shifted the narrative of the Trump campaign's interactions with Russia, revealing that Russian officials alerted the campaign, through an intermediary in April 2016, that they possess thousands of Democratic emails and other dirt on Mrs. Clinton. According to the plea documents, Mr. Papadopoulos repeatedly tried to set up a meeting between campaign officials and the Russian government. Mr. Trump and his advisors said the charges did not prove collusion with Russia. The White House said that the indictments had nothing to do with Mr. Trump or his election campaign and instead sought to refocus attention on Democrats and their actions during the race. Shortly after the charges were announced, Mr. Trump wrote on Twitter, "Sorry, but this is years ago, before Paul Manafort was part of the Trump campaign. But why aren't crooked Hillary the Dems the focus?" In a second tweet, minutes later, he added, "Also, there is no collusion, but despite a White House response at times peppered with misleading and obfuscating claims, Monday's developments propelled the investigation into a new and more dangerous phase for Mr. Trump and amounted to a political body blow to a president who has spent months insisting that the investigation was nothing more than a witch hunt based on a hoax. The charges are a significant escalation in the Russia inquiry. The special counsel leading the investigation, Robert S. Mueller III, was assigned in May to look into whether anyone close to Mr. Trump participated in a Russian government effort to influence last year's presidential election. Monday's indictments indicate that Mr. Mueller has taken an expansive view of his mandate. Here's a closer look at several current and former associates of the president who have been linked to Russia. Read reactions from the right and the left, and from Times readers. In our roundup of opinions from around the web, conservative writers mostly seem to focus on the fact that the charges against Mr. Manafort didn't implicate Mr. Trump, while liberal writers zeroed in on Mr. Papadopoulos' plea. and our coverage of the indictment drew a flurry of reaction from New York Times readers, with more than 2,200 comments in the first 3 hours after it was published. Read what some of them had to say.